Author's Vlog Supplemental 9.5. So this week has been pretty productive. I've gotten a lot done. As you can see from my writing log, I am up to 13,500 words. I got a little bit behind. I think I was a little bit behind last week and I didn't quite catch up. So this week I wrote Tuesday, Wednesday, and today, and I have to do a little bit of writing tomorrow. Saturday's not going to happen. Don't know about Sunday yet. Tuesday went great. Wednesday went really well. I had a little bit of research I had to do. I needed to know something about how private planes worked, you know, what plane it was going to be, how long it would take to get from one place to the other, because Google will only show you with commercial flights, and they give you commercial flight times and not the miles. So I had to figure out how to get the miles, and then figure out which plane it was. It was a whole thing. So that was, I don't know, like an hour or something. Today sucked balls. Today writing was like pulling teeth. It was one of those days when I just could not focus. I've talked about before that I'm a multitasker at heart, and focusing is not only very tiring for me mentally, just because it's very difficult to get my brain to focus on one thing and to not have it jump over here and jump over there because it's bored. I'm not really bored with writing, it's just I'm so used to thinking of other things that it's hard to get it all to focus, and it's very tiring. And my body plays all kinds of tricks on me to get me to stop doing it. Like, it likes to make me tired, and it likes to make me think that I need to clean, and all this other stuff. That combined with my internal editor, oh, I hate my internal editor so much. There's nothing wrong with being brought up this way. I was always taught, do something right the first time. Well, that doesn't really work with writing. It doesn't work with any artistic pursuit. Sometimes you gotta erase stuff, sometimes you gotta redo stuff. So today was a struggle to get it to shut up and my mind to focus. So it took about 2 hours to get 700 words written. Yeah, but I got it written. I got it done. But it was hard. Tuesday, Wednesday was much easier. Today was hard. But that's okay. I'm almost up to the end of the scene sequel that I wrote out. I'm not quite to the Montana house yet, so that's going to be the next thing. Once I get through this, I've got half of this scene to go, and then the sequel, and then I'm out of that write-up, and I'll have to do that again. So I'll probably do that over the weekend, probably Sunday, if I get a chance. It's easier to do it that way because it allows me to be very flexible. Since I know my main points, I don't need to go through the entire book and write out the entire book in scene sequels. It would take away from me that ability to have something to break up the time. Like, okay, I do some writing for a little while. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit of plotting. Now that I've got the feel of what's going on here and I've got a good grasp of where their mindset is, now I know what their next goal and reaction to that's going to be. And then I can write a couple of scenes, you know, just quick outline a couple of scenes and then write them, and then outline a couple of scenes and then write those scenes. It keeps things much fresher. I noticed, because I've done NaNoWriMo a couple of times, that it's very easy to write when you have everything written down in some semblance of detail, so it's very easy to just go from point to point to point to point. The problem with it, and especially with NaNoWriMo, because you have a much more condensed timeline, instead of, you know, 500 words a day or 1,000 a couple of times a week, which I think is kind of how I'm going to end up doing it. You have to do 1,300 words, and there's never time to fix and adjust things. Because as you're writing, you realize, oh, I forgot to add this little thread through this particular scene. I need to go back and just add that in real quick. Or, oh, I forgot this detail. I've got time to just go back and add a couple words really quickly while I'm still in that scene. When you're doing nothing but the writing, I don't think in those terms as much, and I don't spend time going back and doing it, which just means I add time to editing instead of just doing it when I'm writing it, when I'm thinking about it. So I like to break it up a little bit. So it's been going really well this week. I've been doing well. I did another thing that's totally going to make Shvam absolutely roll his eyes. I spent about 20 minutes today writing down the times and when things are happening, at what time, to the characters in my book, just roughly. And I did that just so I have a mental idea of, or written thing saying, okay, this happened around this time, this happened around this time, this happened around this time. A lot of it's not specifically said in the book that it's this time, but I like to know to give me a sense of time, how much time is passing, how much have they done, what is realistic in this instance. If it's only been 2 hours, would they have this reaction, would they actually have this reaction? It just makes it easier for me to write the novel itself. So I have that. It's research you don't really need to do, but I like to do it. It's not in huge detail, and it'll make it a lot easier when I edit. When I go through and I won't have to ask myself, well, what day was this, or why did this take this long, or how long did this take? I've got it written down, and I can just easily keep that going as I go. And there's some reason to understand what day it is because something's going to happen on a specific day. So that matters too. On to the topic of the week. So this week we talked about, what did we talk about? Show, don't tell. That's one of the pieces of advice that we'll be going over during this whole series, because there's basically 3 types of advice out there. There's good advice, and there's a lot of really good advice out there. There's flat out bad advice. Like anytime somebody tells you to do something a specific way and tells you that's the right way, like plotting and pantsing methods, there are a lot of people who will tell you, well, this is the right way to, you can't write a good novel without plotting it, or you lose all your creativity if you don't pants it, you've got to pants it, or it's too formulaic. That might be true for them, but anybody who says that as a universal truth is giving bad advice. Anybody who says you have to do it this way, or you should do it this way because that's how I do it, that's bad advice. Just scrap it. It's automatically bad advice. That's why we've been saying things like, here's a method, here's a method, here's a method, there's this way of doing it or this way of doing it, try them, see what works for you. If it leads to a decent book at the end, that's a right method. There might be more efficient ways to do it, but however you did it, that's a right way. That's not a wrong way. So everything's very personal when it comes to that. It's very subjective. And then there's good advice gone bad. This is advice like show, don't tell, where it's very snappy, it's one sentence, it's something that people hear a lot and repeat a lot, and the problem is if it's too reduced, new people who hear it won't really understand what it means, and that's totally what happened to me and a lot of other writers I've known who heard this advice, don't understand what it means, and then they find out what it means and they think, oh, well, I can only show, tell is bad. No, tell isn't bad. There are a whole bunch of tools in the writer's toolbox. You should never dismiss a tool outright and just take it out of your box and say this is a bad tool. Well, no, if it does its job, it's not a bad tool. You might not like to use it, but it's not a bad tool. It's just not one you prefer. And other people shouldn't say that either. They shouldn't say, oh, never use adverbs, never use passive voice, never tell, you should always show. This is advice that has been reduced to the point of being almost useless because a lot of beginning writers use too much of one. A lot of beginning writers do a lot of stupid things. We all do when we're learning something. Absolutely. We all do something stupid. The problem is sometimes people overreact and they will absolutely believe you should never use adverbs. Good luck with that. I mean, it can be done, but it's kind of an experimental project. Telling other people they should never ever use those words is dumb. Unless you want to do it as an experiment or to broaden your own usage of other techniques by limiting yourself and saying, okay, how would I write this if I can't use this tool? So any all or nothing advice is usually not good advice. As I am very fond of saying, there's almost always a happy medium. There's almost always a balance you can strike. Like we were talking about with show, don't tell. That's true with passive voice. That's true with adverbs. That's true with all of that stuff. Using filter words, all the different things, all the advice. And we'll get into a lot of that as we go. But basically, beware absolutes in advice. Even when it comes to grammatical stuff, and while I do think you should follow grammatical rules for the most part, there are some points of leniency. But you have to know the rules before you can start bending them. You have to know why you're bending them and what effect you are trying to get when you bend them. So good advice, bad advice. I had a good writing week this week. For the most part, I got like 500 words I have to do tomorrow. No big deal. I can totally crank that out. We will be doing pacing this Sunday, will be the video we're doing. Yeah, pacing this week. Have any questions? Comment in the you use YouTube, you know what you're doing. Any questions? hey@getwriting.wang is our email address, and we will totally get back to you if you email us. And we've had a few people email us, and we've totally gotten back to them. So we will see you next week, and I will probably see you. We will see you Sunday, and I will probably see you next week. Get writing.